When an officer who thinks he owns the street runs into someone in the still of the night who doesn't fit into his boxes, sparks fly before the sirens. It was Wednesday, a little after 11 p.m., and Toledo was barely breathing. Empty gas stations, traffic lights changing for no one, the end-of-shift air hanging over the asphalt. Lieutenant Colonel Catherine Simmons was driving through this scene on her way home after hours of meetings at the base nearly 200 kilometers away. The black government SUV, its tinted windows discreet, kept a steady pace. Inside, only a faint whistle pushed the fatigue away. Farther ahead on the shoulder, Sergeant Jacob Parker fought boredom with lukewarm coffee and social media. A shift with no calls and a hungry ego. Then a plateless SUV slid into his headlights, sticking out like a wrong note. Parker dropped the cup, fired up the light bar, and hit the gas, sure he had just found a purpose for the night. Catherine saw the red and blue reflection and followed protocol. Slowed down, signaled, pulled over. Engine running, hands visible, eyes steady in the mirror. Outside, Parker was already scripting a scene where he was absolute authority. He had no idea the driver in front of him carried years of field leadership and zero patience for peacocking. The patrol car door slammed, boots creaked on the pavement, and the air between them stretched tight, like a coiled spring ready to snap. The sharp slam of the patrol car door echoed across the sleeping highway. In her side mirror, Catherine watched a tall cop approach, body tense, palm resting on his holster, flashlight cutting a white circle on the asphalt. He skipped the passenger side and stopped by the driver's window. License and registration. No niceties, no good evening. Catherine kept her hands open on the wheel, lowered the window halfway, and held the beam that flooded the car. "Officer, what's the reason for the stop?" The question came out steady, not defiant. Parker narrowed his eyes and swung the light onto her face. "Your car was weaving between lanes, no turn signal. Looked like the driver had been drinking." Catherine felt the weight of the accusation but didn't budge. "I was driving within the limit, sir." The comment didn't change Parker's tone. "License and registration," he repeated, louder now, each syllable hitting like a hammer. Without dragging it out, she moved slowly, a deliberate gesture to stay predictable. She opened the glove box, grabbed the documents, and handed them over. "Government vehicle. I'm a federal employee." Parker ran the flashlight over the badge, lingered on the federal seal, and went silent for a moment that seemed to stretch the air inside the SUV. "Military service?" The question hung in the beam, carrying something more than plain curiosity, as the whole night seemed to hold its breath waiting for the next answer. Catherine tapped the brake when the blue lights appeared in the mirror. Parker, the officer, came up to the window with a half-smile that clashed with the tense mood. "Yes," she confirmed, as if replying to something only he could hear. "That doesn't exempt you from the rules." "I never said it did," Catherine shot back, voice calm. The smile vanished, his voice turned razor-sharp. "I need you to step out of the vehicle." She raised her eyebrows. "Excuse me?" "Out of the car, I'm going to run a sobriety test." Catherine tightened her grip on the wheel. "On what grounds?" "I followed all the instructions, and I'm sober." Parker stepped forward. "You're going to disobey a lawful order?" She stayed still. "I just want to understand the legality of your request." He didn't like the pause. He grabbed the handle and opened the door. "Out, now." Right then, Catherine raised her phone, hit record, and stated, "For the record, this interaction is being filmed." Parker's eyes flicked to the camera. For a second, certainty gave way to a flicker of doubt, but the order came just the same. "Out of the car." Catherine stepped out. Shoulders square, chin level, no overt challenge. Just the firm decision to record every second. On the asphalt, the headlights cast long shadows, and the silence between them weighed more than the idle siren. All that remained was to see whose will would prevail when the tension finally blew. She didn't raise her voice or try to run. Even out of uniform, every move said this woman was made of steel. For a second, Parker noticed it, and a question whispered, "Who are you anyway?" Pride swallowed the warning. He stuck to protocol and told her to walk straight under the brightest streetlight. Just another Saturday night checkpoint scene. Steady steps, eyes forward, clear speech. Catherine showed the precision of someone who hadn't touched a drop of alcohol. Even so, the officer slapped her with a ticket for swerving out of her lane. She took the slip in silence, returned a quick look, and vanished down the dark road. Parker had no idea that piece of paper would land in court and turn his world upside down. 15 years of patrol had carved trenches in Sergeant Jacob Parker's face and, deeper still, in his belief that authority comes from a firm voice and a quick stride. He'd crossed makeshift barricades, cleared debris from pileups, and built a reputation strong enough to snap recruits to attention the moment he entered a room. He thought little, barked a lot. To him, the badge meant command. Mouthy teens, angry drivers, every one of them ended up folding. On Toledo's West Side precinct, they knew Parker punched in on time, filled out forms flawlessly, and never backed down. They also knew his sharp tone could escalate in seconds, but nobody tested his limits. Not until that night. Back at the station, Parker hardly mentioned what had happened. He logged the citation, lane drift, alcohol suspicion, no arrest, and dropped the body cam in its charger like always. The file sat there forgotten for 48 hours. In the break room, he gave the quick version. The lady wanted to go head-to-head, he said, biting into a donut. Added that she flashed a government badge to impress me. Officer Diaz frowned. Is she military? Parker shrugged. That's what she said, some fed with perfect posture. Name? Simmons, Adrian Simmons. Diaz went pale. Lieutenant Colonel Simmons? Parker stopped chewing. How do you know? She gave a talk at the academy last year, Diaz answered carefully. Chief of logistics at Fort Wayne, Bronze Star, 2 overseas tours. She's no lightweight. Parker waved it off, trying to keep his authority. On the road, I'm in charge. Still, Diaz's respectful tone cracked Parker's usual confidence. He didn't review the footage or rethink the ticket. He called the shift done. Only the shift hadn't ended anything. At dawn, Simmons filed complaints with Internal Affairs and the Inspector General. And she wasn't alone. The recording was already playing on a battalion of lawyers' laptops, ready to jump from screens to newspapers. Quiet reports climbed the chain of command without raising alarms. Parker kept working intersections, yelling orders, and racking up small wins. Sure, the world still ran his way. For years, supervisors looked the other way. The union buried grievances, and he treated regulations as suggestions. This time, though, someone on the other side didn't argue or raise her voice. Adrian Simmons just logged every word, attached dates, and filed receipts that spoke for themselves. The warning came in a letterhead envelope. Formal inquiry. Right then, Parker realized Adrian wasn't after the spotlight. After 22 years of service, 2 combat zones, and scares that would drop veterans, she'd have quit if it were just ego. But she remembered the recruits she guided, the civilians ignored, every woman, especially black, who swallowed her pride to dodge another Liamo. She wouldn't let the story repeat. Next morning at Fort Wayne, Indiana, Adrian stared at her office monitor. She'd slept little, not just from anger, but because the scene played on a loop. The condescending tone, the hand hovering over the holster, the rehearsed provocation. She knew the script. She knew how fast things go wrong, even with the camera on. And she decided this time the record wouldn't end in silence. Sergeant Jacob, Adrian's aide, leaned halfway through the doorway. Everything under control, Colonel? She looked up from the report, steady. Not yet, but it will be. He stepped fully in, closing the door. I watched the footage. Need me to call the base attorney? I've already contacted JAG. Jacob exhaled. And the publicity? You really want to push this? Adrian leaned back in her chair. I'm not looking for a spotlight. I'm looking for accountability. Her rank didn't come from pretty medals, but from years of decisions that changed outcomes. She'd led convoys in hostile territory, coordinated post-hurricane rescues, secured supplies on 4 continents. Yet on a quiet Ohio road, all it took to become suspicious in Corporal Parker's eyes was not rolling her window down at the exact second. What bothered her most wasn't his harsh tone, but how natural it felt to him. She left the patrol car, returned to her room, and without raising her voice made 2 calls. First to JAG, then to the Inspector General. She sent the video, described every second, attached the relevant regulations. No hype, just facts. Within 4 days, the case was circulating among the department's legal staff. Still off the papers, but Parker's name sat in a preliminary inquiry, and the in-house counsel had been alerted. While emails passed hands, Adrian kept up his routine of inspections, drills, and logistics meetings. He only brought the subject up when someone asked, and even then, in short sentences. Behind the scenes, though, he was planning his next move, because he knew the first gear was already turning. The lawyer warned that the tactic could break a federal regulation. Parker, as a public officer and without probable cause, was exposing himself to a lawsuit. Adrian didn't back down and took the risk. Parker stayed skeptical until he opened the envelope. It was a thin manila folder with his name typed on it and the letterhead of the Lucas Civil Court. He tore it open in the parking lot, expecting some random reminder. Instead, he found a summons, a civil rights violation complaint. Plaintiff, Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Simmons. Allegations, unlawful detention, intimidation, abuse of authority. For a moment, Parker just stared at the paper. Then he laughed softly. This isn't going anywhere. He went back to the station, sure he was above it, but the place already felt different. Captain Liam Johnson asked him in, closed the blinds, and went straight to it. "We need to talk." Parker dropped into the chair, arms crossed. "About what?" "The incident the other night. She's not an ordinary driver. She's playing the victim because I wouldn't back down, that's all." Johnson didn't match his tone. "She's a combat veteran, high rank, spotless record, and strong connections. And she recorded everything from 2 angles, your camera and hers." Parker blew air through his nose. "So we're backing off because she wears medals? We're not pretending it's trivial either." "The court's waiting for you," said the captain. "When this comes out, it's going to shake everything up." Parker lifted his chin, still sure of himself. "She wasn't even detained. I never got close. I did exactly what the manual says." "You were on edge, Liam. You turned a routine stop into suspicion before you even knew who the woman was." With no comeback, Parker was left with the summons in hand. Hearing in 3 weeks. In the hallways, doors seemed to close a second faster when he walked by. In the locker room, conversations died the moment his name popped up. The pack could smell the old leader's blood. On the other side of the base, Catherine moved in silence. She didn't call the press, didn't post on social media. She sat with the legal team, reviewed the body cam footage frame by frame, and laid out every detail she'd lived. Her posture was tempered steel, calm, measured, unyielding. "Do you really want to push this?" Attorney Delaney Price asked. "It'll be public, it'll stick to you." She nodded once. "Then let's do it," Price said after a deep breath. "Not many people would have the guts." "I've swallowed too much already," Catherine replied. "I'm not here just for me." She wasn't asking for a check or empty apologies. She wanted a landmark, something anyone could cite when a badge tried to cover up abuse. She wanted the record to speak for everyone who'd ever been silenced by the shine of a badge. When the trial started, Catherine didn't hide. She walked in wearing her uniform, badges and medals clinking, a reminder of years of service. She wanted the jury to understand that night didn't fit only in a rearview mirror, but in decades spent on far-flung roads waiting for the same justice that was now examining her. Parker was already there. When he noticed the insignia, his smile thinned. The room held its breath. The real action would come when Simmons took the stand. The packed courtroom showed familiar uniforms. District officers and soldiers from Fort Wayne sat next to civilians who knew little about the case. For many, it was just a traffic stop gone wrong. For Catherine, the breaking point after years of tension. Motionless, Parker faked calm. His lawyer, Elliot Evans, leaned in and whispered something lost in the murmur. They called Catherine. She stood, straightened her collar, and walked with the cadence of someone who'd led convoys through hostile zones. Not rushed, not hesitant. Every step told her story. Reflections off the gold ribbons followed the oath. The judge cleared his throat. "Colonel Simmons, thank you for your service. You may proceed." Prosecutor Delaney Price didn't waste time. "Lieutenant Colonel, describe for the jury the night of January 17th. Catherine lifted her chin before speaking. She said that at 11:15 p.m. she was leaving the Indiana Guard Reserve when blue lights filled her rearview mirror. No swerving, no whiff of alcohol. Yet Officer Parker told her to pull over. She stayed calm, asked simple questions. The answers came back sharp. With no explanation, he ordered, "Step out of the car." He hammered the order again when she asked why. The wave of murmurs in the courtroom rose a notch. Catherine then held up her phone. The recording started the instant she hit rec. On the screen you see a calm driver and a tense cop, his hand hovering near his gun while he runs a pointless sobriety test. Delanne, her lawyer, ticked off each step. Did you disobey any instructions? No. Did you resist at any point? No. Did you tell him who you were? Yes, I said I'm a federal employee driving an official vehicle. In total silence. Not even a chair squeaked. The official body cam confirmed every detail. The harsh tone, the defensive stance, the indifference once every test came back negative. The jury's eyes stayed glued to the screens. No one spoke, but the heaviness in the room betrayed a collective thought about to surface. The next click could change everything. Evans stepped up to the lectern with the caution of someone trying to look respectful while hunting for cracks. Lieutenant Colonel Simmons, if I may. Is it possible Agent Parker was just following protocol? Catherine didn't move her head. No. Could he have been looking out for your safety or others? I was in my lane, sober, not hostile. There was no risk. Even so, you recorded the stop. I recorded it because I've learned silence doesn't protect you. I wanted an exact record. So in your view, officers shouldn't have discretion during a stop? They should, but paired with discipline. The badge carries responsibility, it's not a blank check. When it was Parker's turn, he didn't sit. He stood watching the video again frame by frame. Every pause, every clipped answer, every look that treated Catherine as less than human. The prosecutor edged closer. Sergeant Parker, why did you order her out of the car? Parker stiffened. She seemed evasive. Did she disobey any order? She questioned me. Is questioning you a crime? No. Did she yell, threaten you? No. Then why escalate? Silence. Did you know the driver was an Army lieutenant colonel? No. If you had known, I probably would have acted differently. The truth surfaced, but never in full. That night, Parker didn't see a person. He saw someone who wouldn't bend, who didn't talk at his pace, who refused to lower her head. Now, seated across from her, in a uniform that usually signals who's in charge, he has to face the same picture everyone else sees. 3 days pass. The verdict arrives. The gallery is nearly empty. No rows of uniforms, no plainclothes cops guarding turf. Only Catherine, her lawyer, and a handful of onlookers remain. Parker, beside his counsel, keeps his face blank. His jaw chews on the seconds. Judge Kristen Gonzalez stacks her papers and drops the room into silence. In the case of Simmons v. Parker, the jury finds for the plaintiff. The sergeant shifts. Catherine doesn't move. There was a violation of constitutional rights during the stop and an unlawful detention. The conduct fell below department standards and the minimum acceptable professionalism. No applause, no murmurs, just the muffled sound of consequence. The lawyer whispers, "We'll appeal." But even the whisper sounds unsure. The judge continues. There are no criminal charges for now, but the plaintiff is awarded $35,000 in damages. The decision will go on the public record and be sent to the Department of Justice and the Toledo Police for a policy review. Catherine listens. She doesn't raise a fist or put on a show. A restrained, almost private nod is enough. The goal is on the board. The game goes on. As soon as the judge ended the session, Parker slipped through the courthouse doors and lingered near the steps. Footsteps echoed against the clicks of cameras. It wasn't a swarm of reporters, but a few microphones were enough to make him drop his head. A brown folder covered his face as he hurried to the sedan waiting for him. No word, no wave. The door slammed and the car pulled away. Inside, Catherine leaned against the wall and unlocked her phone. The screen read, "Verdict upheld, case closed." Her lawyer Delaney walked up. "We could have asked for more," she said. Catherine let out a short sigh. That's not what was at stake. Delaney studied the client's face, unsure whether he was seeing relief or exhaustion. "Do you think it'll make a difference?" Catherine looked at the glass doors that opened onto the street. "Maybe next time he stops someone, his hand will feel heavier before it lands." 7 days later, a memo made its way through the department. Parker was placed on administrative leave while an inquiry reviewed his conduct. Some talked about a transfer, others dismissal. Either way, the badge that once shielded him now showed cracks, and no one bothered to hide them. Back in Fort Wayne, Catherine went about her work as if the clock had never stopped. She wasn't chasing headlines or medals. She plunged into the pending reports, route spreadsheets, and training schedules. Inside her unit, though, her presence alone delivered the message. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard, or show scars to prove you've suffered. Sometimes quiet sends the loudest message down the hallway. The verdict was in, but she knew justice doesn't end with a sentence. Accountability starts after the courtroom lights go out, she reminded herself while checking sign-ups for field exercises. 60 days went by. On that muggy morning, Catherine walked into a room packed with recruits still smelling of fresh fabric. They expected advanced tactics tips. They got something else. She moved between the rows, stopped by a desk, and let a question hang. Who here thinks the uniform by itself guarantees respect? A few hands went up, some hesitant, some steady. Catherine nodded, understanding the expectation before dismantling it. I get it, she said. The sharp cut of the jacket and the polished pins look like a promise of authority. But here's what experience teaches. Respect isn't stitched into your shoulders. You earn it in the details no one sees, in the decisions you'll make when the room is empty. She let the silence settle for a moment before continuing. Power follows the same rule. A badge, a rank, any title doesn't protect you. It weighs on you. If you can't carry that weight with discipline, you don't deserve it. In a corner, a recruit leaned forward, focused. Catherine caught his eye. Once, an officer forgot that. I could have yelled, run, or just swallowed the injustice. I chose the harder path. I filed the report, logged the complaint, went to court, and laid out every detail. She took a slow breath. That officer thought the badge made him untouchable. He learned otherwise when he saw my rank not just on my shoulder, but in my actions. That's the line between authority and leadership. The room stayed quiet, the kind of silence that falls when an idea hits the mark. Catherine closed her folder and scanned the faces. Lead with character, serve with integrity. The uniform doesn't speak just for you. It carries the stories of those who've been here and those yet to come. She stepped down from the podium without waiting for applause. The message was already moving among them. Authority without responsibility, a fragile mask. When something's wrong, don't look away. Silence comforts the guilty. Courage protects us all. If what you heard here sparked something in you, share the story. Drop your own experiences in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next stories. Thanks for your time. We'll keep moving forward, alert and steady until the next video.